Hi, this is Alex Bryan, President of East West Associates. I appreciate you all signing up for the webinar. We'll go ahead and get started. Today, we're going to specifically focus on Poland and Central Eastern Europe, specifically on the Polish market, on supply chain manufacturing. We're very lucky today to have two very established, well knowledgeable speakers, and we're going to be moderated by Mark Plum. The webinar itself will last 1 hour. It's a hard stop. We'll first jump into just a brief introduction of East West Associates and explain who we are. Part two will be talk briefly about a webinar series we're doing in Poland and also globally. We'll have an introduction of the two speakers and Mark Plum as moderator. I'm going to give a brief description of the current global supply chain, then Poland and Eastern Europe, a few slides on that, then drill down specifically on the Polish market, provide one case study, and then get into Q&A discussion. The Q&A discussion is going to be about 40 to 45 minutes of this whole presentation, so it'll be a lot of back and forth. For you all that are, all the people who've attended, we've got a lot of folks signed up, so if you have questions, all you need to do is go to the control panel, which is on the right-hand side, and you click questions and you type in your question and send it. It'll come to us and we can ask the speakers. We already have a large number of questions already. If we cannot get to your question, we'll follow up with you after the webinar. But please feel free to ask questions as we're going through this. And again, click on the question box. So at this stage, just a brief introduction of East West. We're founded in 2005. We operate really in 5 markets: US, China, Southeast Asia, Mexico, and Poland, Central Eastern Europe. All who work with East West all have P&L responsibilities of running Western multinationals on the ground in our core markets. Our focus is really supply chain, operational, commercial, and risk management improvements. And we obviously operate in a broad range of different industry sectors. And here are the areas we were focused on. And today we're going to focus specifically on the Polish market. So I'm going to turn now our attention to the webinar series and ask Mark Plum to give a brief background on the webinar series and how it ties into today's presentation. Mark?
Sure. Yes, thanks, Alex. So yeah, as Alex mentioned, we're going to be having a series of webinars, and they really are all kind of focused around, the issues in China and what's going on in China, and should we be looking at a China +1, China relocation, whatever we talked about it. So which countries are the right locations to establish a non-China or a China +1 China, supply chain base, and why? So, and we're going to be looking really at 3 regions over our next series of webinars. So what the companies looking to develop supply chains are looking into Mexico for the US and North American market. So for example, if you're making products that cost containerization, shipping costs are important, and your markets are the USA, then Mexico makes a lot of sense, and we'll talk about that in a webinar later on. If selling products in Asia and or your products are not the cost of freight is not not critical, as in PC boards, etc., then Southeast Asia is really good, Vietnam, Thailand, etc. And as we talked about, if your markets are in Central and Eastern Europe and shipping costs and time to market are important, then Central Eastern Europe is a great market to be producing for the Western European market. So we'll have a series of webinars on that over the next 3-4 months. Next slide, please, Alex. So again, as I was saying, on the webinar series, we're going to be looking at Mexico, supplier ID, make versus buy analysis, site selections, where should you go, should you buy, should you build, that sort of thing. In China, a lot of us went to China 25, 30 years ago. We know how to build factories, but how about if we have to close anything, consolidate, or relocate? That's a skill set that a lot of companies don't have because they haven't needed it. Also, site selection and plant relocations within China. So say you're supplying General Motors in the SAS, Shanghai Automotive, you're going to need to be there. How do you do it better? How do you improve your facilities? And then, as I mentioned earlier, sourcing electronics from China, Southeast Asia, again, PC boards, electronics, all that kind of stuff, really strong in, as I said, in Malaysia, in the Philippines, in Thailand, in Vietnam. So we'll have a series of webinars on that as well. Next slide,
Great.
please, Alex.
Great, thank you, Mark. And
Sure.
if anyone can pull up on our website, we've just completed webinars on Vietnam, Thailand. We'll have this webinar, obviously the recording. You can go on our website and view which regions of the world you want to discuss the webinars on. So now let's get into this one, which is the most important one right here today. I want to introduce the speakers. We're very fortunate to have Darius Pilak, who is the EWA Director for Poland, Central Eastern Europe, and Governor Barker, who's Senior Vice President, Supply Chain Operations for Weber Incorporated, and Mark Plum will moderate. So Darius, if you wouldn't mind taking 30 seconds, a minute, and introduce yourself, introduce your background, and then Garvin, I'll ask you to do the same thing, if you would, please.
Good afternoon, everyone. Here in Poland, it's already afternoon. I am an automotive engineer from my first education, but then I also studied business. So I hold an MBA degree. And over 20 years, I was involved in procurement and sourcing in different aspects. From cost perspective to arrangement and organization of different procurement and sourcing processes. I cooperated with, as Alex mentioned, big internationals, as an independent consultant, also through consulting companies, including Big Four companies.
That's excellent. Darius has been with East West now for about 3 years. And Darius is originally from Poland, obviously, and has been operating on the ground there with us for a long time. Garvin, if you wouldn't mind taking a quick minute and introducing yourself, that'd be great.
Okay, thanks, Alex. Yeah, Garvin Barker. I've spent all my career in manufacturing and supply chain, coming up on my 30th year. A lot of that was with Schneider Electric, but I've been at Weber for the last 5 years and led a greenfield startup in Poland. So this subject today is really familiar to us. We've been operating there for a couple of years. But in my role, I lead the global operations team, which includes manufacturing, safety, quality, our supply chain strategy group that works on our footprint plans, and industrialization of new products. And looking forward to talking about this. Like I said, we've had great success in Poland, and look forward to answering your questions later. Thanks.
Thanks, Garvin.
Yeah, thanks. So, hey, thanks, Alex. So, yeah, my name is Mark Plum, and I've been actually with East West now for about the last 10 years, up until from about roughly 1990 to 2014. I lived in Asia. I was a president of Briggs and Stratton Asia for 10 of those years, having 7 to 10 operations from Korea, China, Philippines, etc. So I have a pretty good background on the whole Asia scene. And then as China has developed and has developed with some of their issues, we've put facilities in now, help clients go to Southeast Asia. And I worked closely with Garvin about 3-4 years ago when Weber decided that we wanted to take a look at Central and Eastern Europe for their consumption of product in Western Europe. So yeah, strong background in Asia over the last 30-40 years.
Excellent. All right, thanks, Mark. So now kind of turn it over to kind of the global, we'll do part 4 of the global supply chain and distribution center, and then get into the Polish market, and then get into questions. So Mark, I'll turn it over to you if I could here.
Sure. Yeah, well, yeah, again, we'll go through this pretty quickly. For those of you who have been around China the last 10, 15, 20, 25 years, we know the current state is changing. We have costs are going up, labor, raw materials, finished goods. Why we went to China 30 years ago for low labor, if we were exporting, is really not there anymore. Subsequently, in 2017, we added in the tariffs. So if you're in China and you're producing at higher labor costs, and then now you're shipping that product back to the States with 25% duties, that model, it doesn't work like it did 30 years ago. So companies now, COVID really exposed, I think, some of the long shipping lines. So near sourcing strategies and away from dependence on China is really kind of where people are going now. And we learned a lot. COVID exposed a lot of some of our issues we all had, being dependent on one country with long supply chains. This this doesn't mean that if you're in China for China, you leave China. We'll have webinars going on in the future that'll help you improve your China operations for China. And then lastly, and it doesn't appear to be going away anytime soon with China, is the geopolitical issues and how they are going to drive your investment decisions and make it more challenging over the next 3 to 5, 10 years. Next slide, please. So we're going to talk in, as I said, so in this case, we know China's, if we're looking at a China +1, for example, or other, then we're going to talk a little bit about the Poland, Central Eastern Europe overview. Next slide, please. Yeah, so a lot of times, and we did this quite frankly with Weber, we did a 4-country study, the Weizgrad 4 study, looking at 4 countries that American manufacturers have been going to, where labor rates are good, where travel time to Western European markets is good, where technology is good, where labor availability is good. And in this case, next slide, please, Alex. In these 4 countries, we talk a little bit about you're 8 to 10 hours away from Frankfurt. So if you were manufacturing 5 years ago, large bulky products in China, shipping them to Frankfurt, you've got 20, 30 days on the water. Now, if you're manufacturing those same products, say in Poland, for example, you're 10 hours away from Frankfurt. So Czech Republic is good that way. Hungary is good. Slovakia is good. So with these areas, with Central Eastern Europe, you can get the benefit of low labor costs, high labor technology, and short distances to your markets. Next slide, please. Okay, so we're going to talk today specifically about Poland, of the 4 Weizgrad. So you can see, in kind of a busy slide, but this just goes to show how much automotive manufacturing is going on in Poland, from the OEM, from General Motors to Volkswagen to tier 1 suppliers, Delphi, Bosch, etc., component suppliers, I should say, Polaris. So kind of the who's who of automobile manufacturing, and at the OEM and the tier 1 and the supplier level is in Poland. Next slide, please, Alex. Again, we're going to talk about maybe 6 industries. I just talked about auto. You can see what's happened with the plastics industry, and just through exports, from about $2 billion to over 22 billion or 18 billion exports of plastic related products from Poland to Western Europe. Next slide, please, Alex. Look at 4 categories: domestic appliances, the LGs, the Whirlpools, the Electroluxes are all there. Electronics, Foxconn, LG, Flextronics, Toshiba are all there. As far as machining, SKF, Bosch, Timken bearings, Danfoss, all there. So kind of a who's who in the manufacturing area. So that's 5, 6 industries. Next slide, please, Alex. Kind of developing over the last 15 to 20 years now on the eastern side of Poland is kind of the aerospace industry, and it's really turned into a kind of a startup. And this is the area actually that we talk about in our case study. We move one of our clients to. So an up and coming growing area, aerospace. Next slide, please, Alex. So, and then not lastly, but we'll talk here a little bit about R&D centers and as far as to investing. And Poland is offering incentives to move your R&D centers. So you can see in 2010, not so many. In 2021, a tremendous growth in R&D centers. One, to support your manufacturing, and Poland too wants you to bring technology to Poland, and they're willing to pay for it. Next slide, please. Just 2 bullets I want to talk about here. If you decide to go to Poland, you have a lot of company. The American companies are the number 2 manufacturer from a USA, from a country standpoint, and there's over 1,500 USA firms currently operating in Poland. So if you go to Poland and you're an American firm, you have a lot of company. Next slide, please, Alex. Again, just some more background on Poland: assets, who's some of the big guys there: Warner Brothers, Amazon, GE, Whirlpool, PepsiCo. In employment, well, again, Amazon, Lear, Raytheon, 3M. Operating revenues: Cargill, Whirlpool, Mars, our chocolate friends, GE. And then investments, again, Raytheon, 3M companies, PepsiCo. So again, a who's who of USA companies. Next slide, please, Alex. So yeah, we'll talk a little bit about a case study, which is a client of ours. Next slide, please, Alex. This is a client of ours, East West, that had a vertically integrated manufacturing facility in Western Spain, and they supported the airline there, the airport industry, with ground transportation. The vehicles that move around luggage, the vehicles that tug the planes away from the terminals, anything with a vehicle. They went to Spain many years ago because they had some incentives. And now what's happened? Well, the incentives have run out. The airline industry has moved, frankly, to Central and Eastern Europe with component suppliers, and then the new airports are also moving in that direction. So the client wanted to do two things: wanted to move closer to their markets and wanted to shed manufacturing costs. They really wanted to go to an asset-light model where they could contract manufacture near their consumption and not have all the assets of land and people, et cetera, et cetera. So East West, we were hired to take a look at who would be available. We looked at, of course, all 4 countries. We selected Poland. We selected kind of the eastern side of Poland, where there's also a history of off-road transportation, guys who made tractors, earth-moving equipment. So they were already in that. They were one factor away from airport transportation. They were off-road transportation. So they have competitive labor rates, good access to European markets. We shortlisted the 3 potential manufacturers. We then had our clients and us visit all 3 facilities, as well as visiting the facility in Spain to see what would be involved in taking what they did in Spain, move the equipment, move the manufacturing lines, and move them to these third-party contract manufacturers. We developed term sheets so everyone knew kind of what they were going to be involved in, and then we helped them sign the contracts, helped to transfer technology, helped them to identify suppliers, and now our client is moving the production process presently to this new entity. So the short of it is, they shed a lot of assets. They went to an asset-light model, and they were much closer to their clients and closer to their component suppliers. So that's a case study there. So
Excellent.
Next slide, please, Alex.
All right, so now we're jumping into the Q&A discussion. And as I mentioned, Q&A discussion is going to be 40% of this presentation. It'll be for the next 42 minutes. And we designed them this way because really the whole purpose is to hear the 2 very knowledgeable speakers. You've got now a background of what's going on in Poland. You've got a background on what's going on in the market on different industry sectors. So we got in a lot of questions, and we've broken it down really into 4 buckets. First bucket is around strategic questions. Second is around supply chain and manufacturing. Third set of buckets is around site selection and governmental incentives. And the 4th bucket is around labor. Now, these are questions we got from the people who have registered for the webinar today. And again, if you have additional questions, please go onto the control panel on the right, click in the questions and send them to us. But we've already got about 12 questions here. We're trying to get to all of them. If you have questions, please send them to us. We'll get them answered. If we don't, we will follow up with you afterwards. So I'm going to turn it over now to Mark, who's going to work with Garvin and Darius to go through all these questions. And that will take us, the whole point is have a good back and forth. And both of these 2 speakers are extremely knowledgeable. So Mark, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Alex. So what I thought we'd start out with is a little bit of Darius. Of course, Darius is Polish. He he lives up in the Warsaw area. He's been working with large companies over the years. So Darius, maybe kind of give us some ideas what kind of companies have been moving to Poland, and what's some of the things that they like about Poland that really makes a lot of sense, and what costs do you see that people have to incur a little bit when they decide on if Poland is the place for them to go?
Mhm. Well, there are several factors that investors mention about Poland, and those who are looking for also for new suppliers. First of all, as Mark mentioned, the cost of labor is quite it can give you quite a good advantage. Poland has a average wage on 30% lower than in Western Europe, and in the same time you have a proximity of the Western European market. So it's a good position to either produce or source from here to deliver to this Western European market. Moreover, the logistics is well developed, and you have a let's say a stable business environment over entire continent, as Poland is a part of European Union. So this is also the factor that is mentioned by Western investors about Poland. What more, as Mark mentioned, we have a lot of R&D centers. Why is that? It's because there is a lot of engineers and a lot of skilled workforce available for investors here. So those several factors are, I would say, main factors that seduce, let's say, and investors and Western companies to Poland. And
Sure.
who is?
Yeah.
Would you add anything, Mark?
Yeah, Garvin. I mean, I know you guys went through this, with us back, 3, 4, 5, about 4 years ago, I guess now 2019. What were some of the strategic reasons that Weber decided that the Zabrze area for them made a lot of sense?
So for us, we were really looking for a make where we sell strategy. We were making some of our products in the US and shipping them into Europe at a pretty high cost. From a freight perspective, grills are big. So from a utilization standpoint, in a container, you pay a lot to ship them between global regions. So we wanted a location that we felt like could kind of anchor us in EMEA so we could make products in that location that we sell there. What was important to us was to be close to Germany. That's our biggest market. So you mentioned it earlier, Mark. It's an ideal location. And we had, from that perspective, and then we also have 2 or 3 3PLs all over Europe in different countries, and we wanted a place where we could ship to them easily. So, location and the ability to get the talent we needed really were probably the 2 biggest drivers for us to pick this area of Poland that we're in near Katowice.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. So Darius, I mean, again, we'll talk a little bit later on about labor, and I don't want to get into that too early. But both guys, as far as everyone gets a little concerned about labor skill set, and we talked about the R&D centers moving there, and I know early on, I think Garvin, there was concern: could we get the skilled labor that we needed if we decided to go to Central and Eastern Europe? What have you kind of found from not a cost standpoint, but the availability of skilled labor for Darius, for some of your clients, or for in the case Garvin, for your operation in Katowice?
I would say definitely yes. You can find as I mentioned, many engineers available. Obviously, they are already working for many companies, but this is let's say significantly higher percentage of educated engineers than in other countries, comparing maybe to China or India, even though. So this is I would say this is the very important factor that you can find not only factory floor workers, but also engineers and well-educated people who again, another advantage is they very often speak English basically, and so the communication is much easier. There is one more factor that has just came to my mind. The time difference, if we have an investor from US calling to suppliers in China, they are ready. I mean, the people in the US go to the office when the people in China they go to bed already. So here in Europe, the time difference is different. So as you see, I can easily participate in this webinar, and so this absolutely makes the cooperation much more better and seamless comparing to China. So you don't have to wait for answer another day and ask it in an email and wait for the response. Yeah.
Sure. Garvin, when the Katowice-Zabrze region, have you found good cooperation with the local government officials and relationships and be able to work well with the local government?
Yeah, before I answer that one, let me add something to what Darius has said about the labor. So for us, as we thought about the labor needed, we were specifically planning to insource or have in-house 2 critical competencies. We've got an enameling that we do on our kettles, and then we also want to do the deep draw fabrication for some of our products in-house. So it's really critical to us to feel like we were going somewhere that we just didn't have not only the right technical competencies in the area, but like we could bring them into the facility to work for us. And we've been really pleased with both of those. We're probably in a better position there with some of our coating technical expertise than we are in other parts of the world. So it turned out to be a great location for us to find the professional engineering type skills, the coding experts, and then it's just in general, just technical skills in general to operate our facility. So that's been great for us. On the incentive side, we worked pretty much directly with KSSE since we're in that Katowice area. They were kind of the broker for us, right, to help us find the incentives. And most of those are based on the capital investment or the number of people you're going to employ. But our experience was the government officials were very engaged. They wanted Weber in their area, and so they made sure we had success not only dealing with them on incentives, but with everything. Right, your environmental permitting process over there is really long and goes through a lot of different agencies. So they helped us to make sure we navigated that correctly. And could do that on time, because that was one of the most critical parts of our timeline of getting started on time. And then also just, the availability of utilities and other things that you're going to need to operate a facility. They made that really easy for us. We really didn't have any issues there.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, I can just kind of, again, not recap it, but just add to that a little bit. On the early meetings we had there, we were able to get to the mayor. In fact, the mayor started the whole thing with some of our very first meetings when we were working with Weber in that area. And then once, and Garvin's exactly right, a global brand name, an iconic name like Weber, with putting in those kind of size facilities with that kind of people was very attractive. And once the mayor got on board as Zabra, I think everything began to kind of move pretty smoothly. But and again, it was kind of a give and take a little bit. You guys, Weber had to change a couple things, the government had to change a couple things, but I think on the early time, it was really Poland was really wanted to attract good USA manufacturing companies. So as far as we talk a little bit already about about labor quality, labor and the stability. This is kind of a question that's come up recently, and I know there's a lot of in other industries, other clients we had. There's been a lot of migrant workers coming in from Slovakia and different places. How do you find that now, Darius? Do you see that there's where there's good migrant work coming in that can kind of support that lower labor base? Or maybe comment on that just a little bit if you could.
Yes, of course. I would say let's say the highest factor at the moment, the biggest factor is we have laborers from Ukraine, and also some laborers from former Soviet Union countries, and they are, I would say, they are good laborers if they are now, let's say, put in a well-developed, production environment. So they work properly, and obviously they may, let's say, accept a little bit lower wages than the Polish guys. As for the migrants from Middle East or Africa, they treat Poland as a transit country. Yeah, so they just come here to maybe stay for a day or two or a week and then go to Germany. So that's their target country.
So Weber, our perspective is we're a highly seasonal business. A lot of our production takes place right before the spring season when people buy grills. And we've had good success bringing in contract workers through, we usually use 2 or 3 different agencies, but for us, that's worked for us. Like when I say a lot, we may increase our headcount by 25, 30% during that period. We saw a little bit of a challenge right at the start of the Ukraine conflict, but that seemed to work itself out, pretty quickly. We had some contract workers that returned to Ukraine when that started, but that was just a real small, disruption that maybe lasted 2 or 3 weeks, and then it stabilized.
Good. So Garvin, so you found that, I mean, because it's always a concern if, as far as your labor, it's retention, keeping a labor, and a new company comes in and they offer, like in China, they offer 20 cents more an hour and you lose them. Yeah. Has you been, I know you use the temporary stuff for a certain percentage, but your main labor base, particularly your production workers, has that been pretty stable? Have you been able to retain that pretty well?
Yeah, it's been really stable. We have, I'd say really the core is all still there. We've been there 2 seasons now.
Yeah.
Our core is still there. You see a few positions turn over, but not very much. I think it's important though to kind of establish your brand and your culture, and that's been a big emphasis for us. We've done a lot of different events there, so that everyone that started working at Zabrze felt like they don't just work for Poland, they work for Weber. And I believe that's one of the reasons why we've had success. Because I mentioned earlier, during those downtimes around our seasonal business, like late in the summer and early in the fall is our lowest period. So we did have a concern we might see turnover there as people saw the schedule a lot lighter, not as much weekend work, just a little bit of a different production outlook during those low parts of the season. But we've been able to manage through that just fine, being transparent with them. And I think part of the reason why is we've just built a real strong culture there where they want to be at Weber.
That's great. You haven't, this is a question now, unlike, because a lot of people have had experience in China where you had to have dormitories and meals and different things. And in the case of where you are, Garvin, I think there's good local transportation where people could live nearby and take the trains, the buses, or even the bikes and get to work pretty easy. Is that what you have found?
Yeah, we're in a good location. It's a pretty well developed area, so there's bus traffic that comes close. You do see at least 8 to 10 bikes every time I walk in, and I'm there. I'm going there next week. It'll be cold next week, so I don't know. Maybe not quite as many people riding their bikes to work, but usually you see 8 to 10 bikes, coming in as well for people to travel in. We do subsidize the lunch, so we don't pay for it outright, but we do subsidize it. So that's another incentive for them there. But we do get good feedback that we're in a location that's easy for our workforce to get to work.
Good. Okay. Thank you. That's great.
Hey, Mark, we had one question come in.
Yeah.
The person was asking about the energy costs in Poland, right? For in a manufacturing operation for supply chain, they were aware that energy costs had gone up right after the Russian invasion of Ukraine, And then their understanding is those costs now have come down. But can Darius and Garvin give further background on that?
Yes, I mean, first of all, we have to consider that energy costs are right now somehow hold on the same level by the government, and they've been held like this for last 2 years. So we expect that there will be a rise in energy costs, but not that significant as in Western Europe, because it's let's say again regulated in order to sustain the stability of the economy. So we have, as Mark mentioned, we have companies like foundries which are consuming lots of electrical energy, or companies that are consuming gas, and this is now carefully watched by the government. And since we are changing the government at the moment, we expect that the new government will be also watching this aspect. So yes, there will be a rise. It's now a little bit lower than in Western Europe. There will be a rise, but I would say in a moderate way.
For us, we've experienced the same thing right at the start of the war. Or the conflict in Ukraine. We were really worried about the gas pricing and gas availability. So we were very aggressive to go put some locks in place and really understand that market. But we found that after the first few months, that really normalized. The supply's been fine. We've never had a supply issue. The local government there did a good job of making sure they had a plan for supply, but it was temporary. I think we're back to what we feel like is a pretty normal level from a price standpoint. Now, one thing we are dealing with that I will share is the transportation costs from a fuel perspective, but we don't expect that to go back down. That's been fairly significant increase and something we're really managing closely. About a year after we opened our facility, we added a DC to the building to serve part of Germany and a lot of the southern countries. And so we have a lot of visibility to that fuel pricing and how it's affecting our distribution spend. So that's something that we're always thinking about and paying attention to, because we do think that's going to stay elevated from a gasoline or fuel standpoint.
That's great. A couple of things, maybe either one of you guys. Darius, maybe you can. So the EU has spent a lot of money, I think, in Poland over the last 20 years developing the highway system, the connectivity to Western Europe. I think down where you are, Garvin, you have good interstate. I would call them interstate, but good cross freeways and highways.
Yes.
Yeah,
I confirm that. Yeah, it's hundreds of thousands of kilometers right now of highways and motorways that we have available. But what I'm speaking about the European funds, I would also mention that whoever is investing in Poland, it could be someone from abroad, or it could be a local investor, can also apply for European funds to support their investment. So that's also worth to mention, that this is a kind of incentive that brings investors here.
Yeah, I think, and I'll talk a little bit about that from when we did the 4-country site study a little bit. We worked with Czech Invest, which was in Czechoslovakia, or not Czechoslovakia, but Slovakia. And we've worked, of course, with KSSE and the different investment groups, the government, quasi-government, and quasi-government agencies, and Poland was, again, what they were able to really help guide, I think, a lot, because they have certain areas, and we showed it on one of the maps where they really want to put certain companies in certain areas, and so if you can have a good cooperation on that, they can really help guide you a little bit and save you a lot of time and money on that note. I know we talked a little bit about some major industries that are already there, automotive and plastics and aerospace. Darius, what other would you say other categories or industrial segments that you see really growing in Poland, or that Poland is really trying to promote? Could you comment on that a little bit?
Yeah, I would say number one that wasn't mentioned so far is the furniture industry. Poland is right now a huge producer of furniture, and I think in this part of the world it's number one supplier to IKEA, for instance. I have one day I have visited one Polish company doing furniture for IKEA, and those are quite huge, several buildings. And if you can imagine, they were working 3 shifts. There were 20 to 30 trucks awaiting to enter the company, several trucks in the company, and another queue of 30 trucks awaiting to leave the company. So this shows the magnitude of operations. And if you consider that we have several companies like this, maybe not that big, but with quite significant furniture production, then it's I think Poland is now I would say even a number one player in Europe as for furniture. And what I would also mention that because speaking about automotive and appliances, those are let's say high volumes industries. So whenever you and obviously you can find suppliers there as you mentioned, but you can also find suppliers for lower volumes industries, like the aircraft equipment manufacturer that you mentioned before.
Mm-hmm.
So since we have a production of trucks, buses, trailers, semi-trailers, aviation, you have lots of suppliers who can provide you with let's say custom-made orders up to, let's say, even higher volumes. Yeah, so I would say it's the variety is quite huge. Apart from that, also chemical industry, pharmaceutical is doing quite well in Poland. So yeah, there is a lot right now.
Well, I'll talk about it more from a market, from a term of commodities. Like a couple of the areas we noticed when we moved to Poland that was really competitive, and I think it's because of some of the industries that you just heard about. Like we found that we were really competitive in plastics, probably more than we thought we would be, because we were moving some things from China to Poland, and we actually found we were getting really good pricing. We thought we'd keep buying our plastics from China, and we haven't had to do that. We've been able to localize that. Really competitive on all the packaging supplies we would use, like corrugated, labeling, literature. We actually use some of the Poland pricing to go back to our U.S. suppliers and push them and basically say, hey, if you don't start matching this pricing, we're going to start buying and importing some of that stuff from Poland. And then the other one that was also a real big benefit to us was aluminum ingot that goes into our castings. Just the commodity itself there is better priced than even in China. So we got some advantages there on our material spend. When we moved to Poland, we knew we might take some price increases in a couple of places on material, but we were saving so much freight, it would offset it. We were pleasantly surprised that in some commodities, we're actually saving money versus the US, and for a few, even versus China, in buying the actual commodity to go into the grill.
That's interesting. Yeah. So again, on your situation, Garvin, that the move from what you were doing in China to what you're doing now in Poland is really, from a cost standpoint, sounds like it's really worked out pretty well.
Yeah, it has.
Yeah, for super.
But, keep in mind, the freight is on some of the grills when they get large. The freight is a big number.
Yeah,
so
of course.
To be able to offset that freight, you can take an increase on a few other things and still come out positive when you eliminate the freight.
You're right, exactly. We talked about you're shipping a fairly bulky item versus a PC board, right? So the freight becomes a significant factor. So that's why in the case of whether it's the USA If it's large items, where Mexico makes a lot of sense. If it's large items for Western Europe, then of course Central Eastern Europe makes a lot of sense. So, yeah, Alex, can you flip the next slide, Alex? I think we've got a couple. I think we've kind of gone through these a little bit here, and I don't want to be repetitive. Yeah, it sounds like, Garvin, from your standpoint, and maybe talk a little bit about your whole site selection and buying extra land so you could add on to it, and working with the local developers and things like that. I mean, could you comment on that just a little bit, please?
Yeah. So the approach we had is that we bought a piece of land and then sold it to the developer to be able to build a facility on the land, and we would lease it. But our intention long term was to try to find a piece of land that would allow us to grow. We started off with around 500,000 square feet, really quickly decided within a year, before we even moved in and started producing, we went ahead and made an agreement to expand that to 800,000 so we could add that distribution center I talked about earlier. But we were really mindful of the long term and how we wanted to grow that, and even left ourselves some space one day if we wanted to do something with more like an office building for R&D facility. So we sized it in a way we knew we could grow into it. The developers were really open to pricing the development that way, where we knew what we would pay at the beginning to build it out, and then what it would take to expand it later. So our whole mindset with buying a piece of land is we think we'll fill that piece of land up one day. Make sure we bought a piece of land that gave us the orientation we needed, to do that.
Right. And you were able to actually then, with, I believe, that developer, they built a suit. I mean, they built you a specific facility for your needs, versus this isn't just a box that you guys work closely with them.
With the fabrication I talked about earlier, and then especially with the coatings, with the enameling and furnace we would need, it needed to be a build to suit, so that we knew we could operate those core competencies inside the four walls.
Yeah, and that's really interesting, because Poland, of course, has also turned in, and Darius can talk a little bit about this, into a great distribution center. So you drive all through Poland and you see I kind of call them boxes, these big boxes that the developers put up for the Amazons, or et cetera, and they're nice, and developers can do that. But I always wanted to, but in the case of Garvin's business, they also have the skill set to really develop and design specific facilities but you can lease those back and don't have to have those assets on your books. That's kind of what I thought. Darius, talk a little bit about maybe the distribution a little bit in that sort of business going on in Poland. Would you please?
Yes, I mean there are many distribution centers in Poland, because Poland is basically kind of in the middle of Europe. So so we have, I would say, mainly in the middle of Poland, where the main highways cross. There are many distribution centers for serving various industries, various businesses. So absolutely, yes, that's a significant industry as well in Poland.
Yeah, Darius. Yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Yeah.
Well, go ahead, Bruce.
No, I was just going to say, so we've been talking a lot about, building in Poland for the Western European market. From either one of you guys, talk a little bit about maybe building in Poland and consumption of your businesses in Poland. Darius, do you find a lot of your experience now, people, because the economy is growing so well in Poland, that a lot of those products that are being produced there now are also now staying there?
Correct. Yes, absolutely. The consumer market is growing, definitely, and followingly, the B2B market is growing as the industry is growing. Yes, so absolutely yes. That yeah, I would say it's a market with a potential. I mean, it's already fifth economy in European Union, so it's quite significant, and it's absolutely worth considering.
Yeah. So Garvin, have you turned Polish into a barbecuing market yet?
I think they were already one of our really strong areas. I'd say that I mentioned it earlier. Like our biggest area is Germany. Germany's
Right.
by far the biggest country we sell into, so it gives us close proximity to that. But the other thing it does for us is the southern countries. So you think about Italy and a lot of what from Italy over to Spain. That's a part of EMEA that's really growing for our products, and being in Poland positioned us well to serve that area from the DC. So that was another advantage of that location, not just Poland, but the growth we think is happening south of there.
Oh, that's great. Thanks, Ray. Yeah, Alex, go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt you there.
No. Two questions came in. One was around a question about identifying and qualifying suppliers in Poland. And the question was, can Garver talk about localization efforts, and can Darius talk about challenges when he's identifying and qualifying suppliers for a customer? What are kind of the 3 or 4 core challenges they run across? So one question was for Darius and one question was for Garver.
I'll go first with the localization. So we went in with the intent that we were going to localize about 85% of the spend for the first 2 product groups we moved into. We're now in year 2 and we're at about 75%. So it took us longer than we expected. I think some lessons learned from that is you're going to look beyond just Poland. Like some of the things that you'll need to find may not be in Poland specifically. We just did a supplier nomination for a new product. We're going to start there next year, and I think for the stampings alone, we were talking about maybe sourcing from companies in 4 or 5 different countries. So you're gonna probably look at things in Romania and Czech, definitely in Poland, maybe in Germany. But I think that was our first lessons learned is localization for us meant beyond just what we're going to find in Poland. There's a lot of good suppliers within a radius that still makes sense. And I think the other one that we learned the hard way that we're now understanding as we develop new products to go there is some of the ways that our products were designed just did not match well with EMEA, supplier specifications and how they operated in EMEA. One specifically I'll call out is plating. So for us, we need a food grade plating on our grates that people use on grills, and we found that wasn't readily available. So one of our big misses on localization is we're still buying grates from a local source and are hoping to localize that soon. But it was all about finding the right plater. So my advice would be look outside of just Poland. I think you're going to find suppliers close by, and then make sure you look at the way your product's designed and see if there's any big mismatches with what's readily available in the region.
That's excellent.
Yeah, what I would add to that is that obviously finding the right balance between the size of your orders and the financial capability of mid-sized suppliers who are available here in Poland, this could be a challenging. So it's obviously some suppliers they can be busy and they can offer only a small portion of their production capability. The other suppliers can offer more, but the order may be too big for their financial condition. Yeah, so you have to basically manage this kind of puzzle game. Yes, you have to manage those puzzles in the right way.
The other thing to be aware of there, I'm glad you said that, Darius. The other thing to be aware of is different size companies in Poland. The government regulations gives them the ability to require different days of invoice payable. So you may have a company policy where you say, I want all my suppliers to be at 90 days or 120 days. Well, yep. It's actually going to be dictated to you by the size of the supplier. A lot of them are 60 days.
Yes.
You won't have the same flexibility. So you do have to think about that as you're picking your suppliers. We had to be mindful of not picking too many suppliers that would require the shortest amount of invoice time.
Correct.
Is that based on the size of the supplier? The smaller the supplier, the quicker the payment?
Yep.
Yeah, the smaller suppliers, basically they want to have a faster cash turnover, and they always insist on 30 or 60 days maximum. Yeah, so that's correct.
And Mark, then the second question that just came in, that or the third question came in, was around warehousing capabilities. This is a company that's registering, and they're looking for warehousing capabilities. They apparently are contract manufacturing, and then they want to be able to store and then do consignment warehouse. And they don't know about the availability of that in Poland.
Yeah, Darius, you might want to be able to give us some insight into that, huh?
I wouldn't consider this as a problem that or an issue. Definitely there is a warehouse infrastructure, and it's only a question to to look for it. Everything, it depends on the business scenario and the business configuration. Definitely you can, as I mentioned, you can find logistics centers, you can find single warehouses available. You can develop your own warehouse next to your production site, basically. So this shouldn't be an issue. I wouldn't consider this as an issue.
Right. Yeah. And
we have that, Alex. We have a supplier that came in and set up a warehouse to do consignment of inventory for us, so we could just bring it in as we needed it. So we found that you can do that. There's local space available, and for this supplier, it wasn't too difficult for them to set that up for us.
Okay, well, that kind of hit, because they were looking at the question is they're looking at, that's good to know. They're looking at warehousing, and they've said they have, they also wanted to know about, are there firms that, for the warehousing capability, have either one of you had a lot of experience, or any of the three of you experience on identifying and qualifying contract manufacturing? They asked about the suppliers, but now they wanted about contract manufacturing. This is to make a manufacturing machinery, so it goes in the electronic sector. So is it a little more sophisticated? Have either one of you all, or either three of you all, addressed that, trying to identify contract manufacturers in Poland?
No, we really haven't. We haven't done that from a Weber perspective.
Well, from my experience, I can confirm that absolutely those kind of suppliers are available. As I said, this is associated with the industries like trailers and semi-trailers production, buses, all this type of production that is custom made or made to order. So definitely you can find this type of suppliers here in Poland.
And if we go back to look at one of the major manufacturers, or Foxconn, of course, now they're at a huge scale, but obviously they're a contract manufacturer, and so they've established, I think, a good electronics infrastructure in there to support them. So I believe that's available as well.
Oh, good. Yeah, good point. Good point.
Well, again, I think I'm looking at the questions here, seeing if what we haven't got to, and I think we've hit most of them. I guess to kind of, Garvin, I think you would go, if you were guys kind of look back and say, did we make the right decisions? This, production closer now, either from the USA or from China. I think you'd say it hasn't been perfect, but it's all turned out generally pretty well, I would say. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, we were really pleased with the execution of our plan. We started on time despite a lot of COVID challenges, and I think the local government officials and the developer we chose was a big part of helping us do that. If you look at the first 2 years of what we expected to get out of it, we've pretty much gotten the payback that we expected. I think the only thing that we would look back and say has been a challenge is that supplier localization. We just learned a lesson there, that there's a lot of work there to do. We probably should have started sooner. And as we're thinking about new products, we have to make sure they're being designed in a way that can be built there competitively.
All right. Well, thank you, Alex.
We asked questions right up to 12 o'clock. So so it's now a hard stop at 1 hour. We promised we would have you in and out in an hour. Again, we've got some questions. Another one popped up, but for, we will get to you after the webinar is over. I want to thank Garvin Barker. I want to thank Darius Belock. I want to thank Mark Plum for speaking at the event today and for moderating the event today and all the questions that were sent in by the registrants. At this time, we'll now terminate the webinar, and again, the audio recording and the presentation will be available. But Darius, Garvin, Mark, thank you all very much.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you all.